All right, so we're going to move on to Liz. And the fun thing about this is many of you who've worked with the Area Agency on Aging in any capacity would know Liz with her work there. But today, she's just coming to us as a regular person and someone who went through a pretty challenging but common situation. And she found a creative solution that's working really well for her. So Liz, just share a little bit about how you came to be part of this presentation today.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. I did do a presentation with Savvy Seniors about 3 years ago when it was still located over at Frederick Meyer Gardens, and it is such a joy to see how much this has grown. The information being presented is invaluable. I think at most of them I was very happy to see the growth. So, Laura, thank you for all that you do. Could we just give her a hand because she's...
Thanks, Liz.
Awesome. Yeah. As I have been introduced, I do work for Area Agency on Aging of Western Michigan. I'm their outreach specialist, so I'm the person that does presentations, and I'm the one at the table behind, a Forest Hill Senior Center saying, "Wow, I'm so glad you came out today." I'm used to being polished. I'm used to having the information down pat, and today I have a whole page of notes because this is a little bit more personal. It's more vulnerable, and so I'm glad to share, but in a way I feel like, I don't know if I should be, but they're reassuring me like, yes, this is information that people might enjoy learning and knowing, and thinking kind of outside the box. So about 4 years ago, I did go through a divorce, and I have 3 grown children, a couple grandchildren, 1 more on the way. And things just didn't turn out like I thought that they would, which I think if I asked everybody in the room, how many of you in this room have experienced something where you think, well, that just didn't turn out like I thought it would? I would imagine almost everybody would raise their hand about something. And this was that something for me. So during that time, about 4 years ago, I had 1 child living still at home, and she got old enough and said, "I'm ready to move out." And I said, "I'm so proud of you." And I promptly went into the bedroom and closed the door and cried because I thought, what am I doing in this house? If she's moving, it was a big house in the Caledonia area. And this was right at the end of COVID. So if you can put yourself back there and kind of remember what happened with the housing market. All of a sudden, it became a seller's market, and every single person in my immediate and extended family was like, "You should sell the house. It's great. Like, you're going to get so much money." And the first time I was not ready, and then the second time I thought, okay, I think I am ready. So the house did sell in 5.5 hours. For well over asking price, which was great. But then what's the plan, right? Well, my mother, my sister, several friends had said, "Why don't you move in with me and then just wait for the housing market to crash? And you're gonna get a great place, Guess what? The housing market hasn't crashed. So I did move in with one of my friends that we've been friends forever. I would say she's like a sister, a member of the family. My kids, grandkids have known her for a very long time. And she happened to be the one closest to work. So she said, "Why don't you move in, pay some rent, and then when the market crashes, we'll come up with a plan." So I did live in her home. I had a ton of fun, actually. It was a great time. And paid, half, like some rent. And it was a perfect location. And she was always very kind. If my kids needed to come over, the grandkids, they've known her. So it was just like coming to a family's home, except it wasn't the family home, if you know what I'm saying. So then in about, I would say it was like 11 months later, I'm also a track coach for Caledonia High School, so I was just making it through the track season, and then I was going to start looking for the next location, a fresh start, a new nest for the kids and grandkids to come to, and I was online, and I was like, wow, I can afford a crime scene. Because the market had not crashed, it had actually gotten worse for buyers. So I spent a couple of months looking, and as I looked, I became more and more and more discouraged. Maybe you've been there about something. Well, this was my something. So through some different circumstances, a family home coming up for sale, and kind of like, well, maybe I could, buy that. My friend said, I've always wanted to buy a house on a lake, and maybe we could buy this together. And I was like, throw on the brakes. I just disentangled financially. I'm not so sure about that. I didn't end up wanting to buy that home, but then another one on Zillow came up, and it checked all my boxes except for the price. So that was a real what am I going to do? And my friend, who is like a family member, said, I've been wanting to move. We have no guarantees, but I am willing to buy this with you, co-owners of this home. And I talked with a lot of people that I know, because it's like, is this a wise choice? Does this check all of the boxes? And we did end up becoming co-owners of this home in the Kentwood area, which is, I'm just friends with a lot of professionals here. I know a lot of people in the audience, and I don't know that I've ever shared this. I shared it with a couple people, which is why Stephanie said, you have kind of an unconventional situation, and Laura said, how about you speak? So that's how I ended up here today, not as a representative of Area Agency on Aging, but rather someone needing to find an alternative living solution that I actually never dreamed might happen.
Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, with the cost of living skyrocketing, I hear this concern all the time from older adults especially, who have found themselves single by multiple different, life situations. And it's just a huge concern of how they can afford to live as a single person. So what were some of the questions that went through your mind before considering actually purchasing this house?
That's a really good question. So I'm a social worker by background, and I am quite, a bleeding heart kind of person. But when it comes to major life decisions, I'm a pros and cons gal. I literally get out a sheet of paper and I write down, what are the pros of this? What are the cons? What is the risk associated with this kind of a decision? And what are the benefits? And so for me, I had a lot of questions about, well, first of all, where do I want to live? What kind of an environment do I want my 3 grown children and grandchildren and future grandchildren to be able to come to? What are my life goals for this? Because although things didn't turn out, I still had hope for my future. And so, I had to make some decisions, but I wanted those decisions to be very intentional, if I could. And so those questions of what are the pros, the cons, and the risks, that was just all written out for several months. And so when the actual question was proposed, even though it wasn't really in the cards and what we were originally planning on, it kind of was like, I've already thought about all of these things. And so, yes, I am willing to make this decision. But those questions of what do I want, where do I want that to be, and what does this look like for the family as a whole, both my immediate and extended family, it checked all the boxes. And so it took some intentional forward thinking even before a scenario presented itself.
Yeah. So I think especially since you originally planned that your situation would be temporary as you were searching for a home on your own, what did you actually learn in those first few months of living with your friend that you would not have had the opportunity to learn had you not, done this temporarily first?
Well, we accidentally had a trial period of living. I hadn't lived with anybody else in my adult life besides my husband. So and we didn't have a trial run. You know what I mean? So it was an accidental trial run, and you do kind of learn that compatibility is important. We've been friends for a very long time, so we already knew that there was friendship compatibility. But sometimes friendship can be sacrificed on the altar of convenience. And that was a big concern for me. But after a year, it was like, we're having a really good time. And we have a lot in common and similar goals because I'm 50 and she's 60. So, you know what I mean? We're kind of in the same stage of life. But it was definitely an accidental trial run. So we learned about compatibility. I also, sometimes I look back and think I wish I could apply these strategies that I've learned now maybe to the past. Maybe there would have been a different outcome. But communication is very key in any relationship, mother, daughter, father, child. child to mother, like all these different scenarios, but kind, authentic, real, and proactive communication, they are of utmost importance no matter what the situation. And so we try to really keep that at the forefront. Also, I would say that for me, I had a lot of healing to do. And so sometimes going through a process and saying like, okay, do I have some hope for the future? That was just really important. And this did present that opportunity. Not that you're like I'm pinning my hopes on this situation, but rather I'm not done. I have a lot to offer my family, my grandkids, and a place that has truly been a haven for the family. So that has been really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is absolutely huge. And one of the things that you and I talked about was how you and your housemate developed a concrete plan that included legal considerations like Jordan talked about, financial items, and even the division of labor for household duties. So tell us a little bit more about what that actually looked like.
Yeah, so in practical terms, because all I'm doing is describing for you a unique situation. I am not prescribing this for you, which is a big difference. Like I wouldn't say that maybe you should do this or that you should do this, but it just happens to be working for me right now. So what we are very careful to do is we do split all finances exactly 50-50. So every 2 weeks, that happens to be pay period. Every 2 weeks, we always know as soon as we have a check, then we go through our bank statements separately, and here's our expenses, and we know what we're splitting and what we're not splitting. Like if she wants to go on an Amazon spree and buy a whole bunch of new clothes, that is not my business. Do you know what I mean? But because we don't have combined finances, but we make sure that anything that has to do with the house or household expenses is a 50-50 split. Obviously, we're communicating well ahead of time what we're doing with the house. Also, we have plans about what happens if something happens to me, what happens if something happens to her. If something happens to me, what will happen with the house and the sale of the house for my 3 adult children. Like that's all been worked out. I would say 98% worked out, and I feel really good about that. That's intentional. It's hard work. It's hard to think about some of that sometimes, but without it, don't do nothing, right? Right. So that's been worked out. I did have to change some things, from the past, but that's important too. I think we all have to at some point, like this person maybe was going to be, and now maybe they're not around or something has happened. So you have to change things. It just takes work. And then we also develop every new year, because we've been living together for 2.5 years, so we've had 2 New Years together. I am always a big, okay, what are my life goals for 2025, 2026? So it's always on the fridge. If you came to the house right now, you would see 2025 goals, both short-term, long-term, and I would say there are only 2 that are not crossed off. And that's something that we happen to do together. Things that we wanted to do personally, developing the home, ourselves, financial goals. And so we've been very intentional about those things. I would say that I am the driver of that conversation. But that's how it is in most friendships, where you have someone who's a pretty strong driver and someone who's saying, yes, I'm here to support. And then as far as division of labor, surprise, surprise, I'm kind of hyper. Like, I have a ton of energy. So what I bring to the table is a lot of energy. I'm very good at cleaning. I love yard work. I mean, get my hands in the dirt and it's a really happy day. I'm also very good at decorating and seasonal change and all that kind of stuff. So the home is beautiful. She is good, surprise, surprise, at the back end of things, the computer work, the ordering of groceries online, trying to plan things that are more about the behind the details, the technicals. She's the driver of if something happens to you, what's going to happen? She really pushed for that conversation. And I was like, oh, I don't want to think about that. But it's so much more reassuring to have a plan. And so, again, I'm just describing what works for us, but being in our middle and older years, we know what we're good at, right? Like, I know that I'm good at the things that I really do. There are times when I say, hey, we're hosting, Thanksgiving, and we work together, but primarily we kind of stay in our own lanes and really let each other thrive in the areas that bring us joy. But we continue to work together with some things if it requires, multiple hands. But that's kind of how, like, that financial and the physical labor and division of all those things and the finances, we really try to split it so that we're sharing the load.
No, those are all great pieces of advice for sure. And by the way, I'd love to have you come over to my house and tend to my plants. So that would be very, very helpful. So I don't care who you live with or how much you like or even love that person, there's always different challenges to overcome. So speak to us about what some of the challenges that you were met with and really how you overcame them, and any final advice that you would love to share with anyone in the audience who might be contemplating something like this on their own.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Let me ask you, what do you think are some of the challenges that two friends living together, kind of like the Golden Girls, what do you think some of our challenges are? Just shout out a couple things. Schedules, what someone said it here? Privacy, thank you. Anything else that comes to mind that can be challenging? Screen time? Dating, thank you, great. You guys are smart. No, you know what you are? Savvy. So I would say that everything you've mentioned are important considerations. Most challenges in life surround another person or people, right? Dating might be about another person. Children and grandchildren coming over when the other person doesn't feel like it. What does that mean? Schedules. Like, I would say that the things that we've struggled with the most have to do with family. So with her family, we've had 2 long-term residents that have come to live in our basement. So, but, our values align in that we are both very blessed. Like, we feel very blessed with the home that we have and with that we've created. And so most blessings we have are not meant to be selfishly kept to ourselves, right? So when the opportunity came, but we have developed hey, so you're living on this, it's called Juanita is the name of the road. So you're living at the Juanita Oasis. We have, if you are the next person, just know that we have a whole 2-page document of things that are like, hey, this is where you're living for this short period of time. Here's the rent, here's this, here's that, here's that. Well, that doesn't just happen accidentally. That happened by a reaction from the first one, but by the time the second one came along, you better believe that there's the document, okay? Because the emotional toll, is there, so when you can be proactive. So that is, one challenge that we faced. Maybe it will be one of my adult children next time. Same rules apply. Like, it matters to have that proactive. I think that, and again, this is where I say, like, maybe this could have been applied in the past, but really expressing expectations is really important. Like, here's my expectations. What am I hoping for this holiday season? What is she hoping for? Do those things align? Is there any fractures that are already there that we probably better try to work out? That's a conversation really we should be having. That's what I asked my kids. What are your hopes for the holidays this year? I mean, just asking those questions, I think, is really important. We try to do that so we can maintain a respectful living environment. Now, one of the things that's really helpful is I'm gone a lot. I am an outreach specialist, which means I'm reaching out and I'm not home during the workday very much. Works great for her, I think, but she works from home. But we do have private areas. Someone asked about privacy. We have private areas for both work and leisure. And so that's really important too. And what if something changes in the future? Well, I'm not exactly sure. My crystal ball is more hazy than yours. However, my sister, who I've always had so much advice from, said, look, you have to live somewhere. And what you're looking for, this box, 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 I have a lot of things that I was looking for. You're there, and if it doesn't work out, then you, Liz, are a winner. You will continue to find a way, even if something changes from here. And I wouldn't consider it a failure. I would consider it a time that you spent really getting back on your feet, learning mutual respect in a situation that you didn't anticipate. You're going to leave it better than when you started, and you're going to continue to maintain a strong friendship. And that, to me, is what I would consider good advice, sound advice. I would say to you, my final piece of advice is sometimes if you find yourself in a living situation, I'm not saying you should do this. However, if you are a winner, and I would imagine that everybody in this room, considering yourself that you are here at Savvy Seniors trying to find a way to navigate a rather difficult process as far as sifting through an enormous amount of information, you can find a way. You have the ability to find a way, even if it's different than what you thought it was going to be. So that would be my final word of advice. Steve, can you wave at me now to let me know I did a good job? Okay, thanks. I told Steve, I'm not here on a professional way. I'm nervous. He said, I'm going to wave at you. You're going to be fine. So thank you. That's my final words. Thanks.